on Tuesday. Thank you to all of you who were able to attend and for the warm sentiments from many others. I continue to be grateful for what North Carolina A&T has done for me and the opportunity to give back in this way. Let us now turn to the business of today's meeting. I would like to call to order the second regular meeting of North Carolina A&T Board of Trustees for 2025-26. Trustees, thank you for your leadership and participation in today's meeting. Let us pause together for a moment of meditation. Thank you. At this time, we will hear the conflict of interest statement.
Ethics and conflict of interest statement. In accordance with Chapter 2, Section 204 of the Code of the UNC Board of Governors, it is of critical importance that decisions made on behalf of the university by its trustees be in the best interest of the university and not be influenced by any potential financial gain to the decision makers. Furthermore, to assure public confidence in the integrity of the university, it is important that the university not appear to be influenced by the personal financial interests of those in decision-making positions. In order to assure public confidence in the integrity of the university, members of the Board of Trustees of the university should not use their positions or appear to use their positions to influence the decision of the university for their personal financial gain. At the same, the university should be able to take advantage of contracts that are advantageous to the citizens of North Carolina and to the university, and should avoid having service to the university be so restrictive that persons with substantial financial interests will be reluctant to serve. In order to accomplish these goals, the Board of Governors has adopted and shall enforce a policy governing conflicts of interest. Each member of this Board of Trustees shall comply with this policy.
All trustees have been provided a copy of today's agenda. Having heard the conflict of interest statement, are there any conflicts that need to be disclosed and recorded at this time? Hearing none, I'll ask Aaron Hart to call the roll.
Trustee Mark Copeland.
Here.
Trustee Ken Gatling.
Here.
Trustee Kathy Harrison.
Here.
Trustee Letitia Hamilton Williams.
Here.
Trustee James Key.
Here.
Chair Gina Lofton.
Here.
Trustee Greg Lowe.
Here.
Trustee Daryl McLean.
Here.
Trustee George Ragsdale.
Present.
Trustee Corey Smith. Trustee Thomas Stanley.
Here.
And Trustee Janai Thornton.
Here.
Quorum is confirmed. We have all received the minutes of the September 26, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We will now hear a report from Chancellor Martin. Chancellor?
Thank you. My mic is working. Yes. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It's good to be here to have the Chancellor's report for what is the most incredible, the best university in this country, North Carolina A&T. And as we start this time of the year, this is a time of the year where families get together. We have, you might want to turn the mic down just a little bit of reverberation. This is a time of year where we have connection with family, connection with each other. It's a time of the year for fellowship. And so as I think about what we're going to discuss here today, as we're all together, there are two things that come to mind. One is growth. We're going to talk about growth. And the other is gratitude. We have a lot to be thankful for. So the idea that I'm really going to focus on our pathway to R1. But before then, we're going to start with a bit of gratitude. And our chair Lofton talked about this, but we really do need to celebrate her incredible generosity for the Gina Lofton Cyber Defense and Artificial Intelligence Lab, which was just named and dedicated this week. And it's an incredible testament not only to her career and her leadership, but something in perpetuity in technology and science and engineering and advancement and innovation that help shape the future, right? So it's going to do a lot to allow us to be at the forefront. And this is a great picture here. Chair Lofton, I think this is your nephews.
These are my babies. The next generation. Tyler is a mechanical engineering major here at A&T, and Xavier is at Central. So I love that picture. Thank you, guys.
Something tells me with your DNA you're going to do that. So, thank you. Let's say something about the state of the university. And folks, the state of the university is strong. We have had a tough year in the last 2 years in higher education for a number of reasons. We've had challenges certainly in federal support, state support. We do know there are some demographic cliffs that we have for student enrollments, certainly in some states more than others. We are fortunate in North Carolina that we've had a steady population of high school students. We still have some uncertainties in this state. This year we haven't had a budget pass, so that introduces some additional uncertainties, especially for state public institutions. But look, we're blessed to have had a really strong year despite the challenges. We set records in enrollment. We had an incredible year in research funding. We got new partnerships that are developing, and we are marching on right at the doorstep to R1. I'm going to spend some time really leaning into that a little bit. So let's talk about our path to R1 without getting to the details of the specific. The main requirements involve expenditures and graduate production. The bottom line is we have exceeded those criteria for 2.5 years. So we're certainly on pace to greatly exceed the criteria this year. The importance is the R1 criteria based on a 3-year average. So at the end of the year, we will have completed the criteria for R1. Now it's a little bit more, there's no bell that rings as soon as you pass the criteria. There is a commission, we do a petition. They look at your university, they do an assessment. They need to see whether you really are building the infrastructure you need. Do you have the protocol in place? Do you have the right experienced personnel? So they don't allow you to just slide into this. We've got to have the right staff, the right infrastructure in place, but we've exceeded these criteria, right? And we're moving fast to make sure that we're going to sustain R1 and well beyond. So we're exceeding this criteria. I want to level set, so the objective is when we leave here, I want everybody to be on the same page about where R1 is and what it means and our significance. You'll see I'm starting out saying, really there are 3 phases of growth on the way to this top research category, being a research institution. Most of us started out as some sort of teaching institution, and then we started doing some research, and we wind up as a teaching and research institution. And there are 3 phases to research growth. First, you have the emergence of individuals doing great work. Single principal investigators doing amazing work. At some point, you have enough people doing research that they start to cluster together and form centers and institutes. Okay, that's a clustering phase. And the third phase is when you have enough of those centers and institutes and sustained research momentum, then the institution itself actually becomes a facilitator of accelerated growth. That means you have really polished systems, you have lots of experienced personnel, you have great infrastructure, you have people in positions to drive opportunities to you. That's what it means. We're right at the boundary. We're just getting into the institutional phase. So that's the hard part. We got to now build the institutional level support to blast past R1. So that's where we are, just into that third phase. There are really two types of research universities. I thought it was important to talk about these. When we talk about research universities, there are two ways that you can get there. Some programs do it by sheer size, large public programs with hundreds and hundreds of faculty. If you look at, say, University of Florida has almost 500 faculty members just in the School of Engineering, right? That's more tenure-track faculty members than we have as a school. So a school like Georgia Tech or University of Florida, they do it in terms of just sheer volume and size and scale, right? They typically are in states that are growing, they've been around for a while. The other part, the other group, are moderate to small-sized universities that get there by production. So that means more funding per faculty member, higher number of research institutes. They don't do it by size, they do it more by scale. And that's really where we are. We're not one of these mega programs, don't really want to be that. We're in that second category. And a lot of private institutions typically are in this second category of small to moderate schools that tend to be a little more elite. So this is really important. What are some key characteristics of R1s? I want us all to be on the same page. Typically, they are obviously research intensive by the definition. So I want to put some metrics on what that means. If universities typically have med schools, then you'll find that if you take the total amount of research expenditures being performed by a university and you divide that by the number of faculty, total number of faculty, you'll find out that schools with med schools, which generate a lot of research funding, the average is about $300,000 per faculty is generated at most of these R1s that have a med school. If there is no med school, most R1s are somewhere in the range of more than $200,000 to $250,000 per faculty member, just as a number in terms of their research production. Now, right now, because we're just getting into this R1 category, we're right now at about $150,000 per faculty member, as shown up here at the top. The size of the graduate programs is really important. Most R1 programs, their graduate size, we talked about this last board meeting. If you take the undergraduate population, everybody starts with undergraduate population. You take about 35% of that population, and that is added in the form of graduate students. That is typically the size comparison and the makeup of most R1 universities. They have at least 35% of the undergraduate population added in the graduate space. Now, the folks at the very top of the list, historically, places like Stanford, MIT, those types of places, they actually have a lot more graduate students than they do undergraduate students. Okay, that's not what we need to be or where we ever want to be, but just telling you how these numbers go. We're at about 15%, so our graduate program would have to continue to grow to be consistent with public R1s, to be at least 30 or 35% the size of our undergraduate population. It was mentioned early today, our student to faculty ratio, we're at about 20 students per faculty. Most of our R1s are around 17 or less. So we've got some work to do with additional faculty based on our current load to be like other R1s. So most of the R1s, of the prestigious R1s, they tend to have either a med school or some kind of other professional school or a land grant, or they're a land grant agriculture. So I want to pause here. Again, if you're going to be an R1, the strong R1s, they either have a med school or they are a land grant school with big agricultural programs. So the two sources that really push you up in funding, life sciences, med school and ag. The other group would be engineering. Those are the two pillars that push most universities forward. Now, we have strong engineering. For us, we don't have a med school at this point, but we do have a strong ag program, and we really need to grow the life sciences portion to really keep pushing up our research numbers. So it is a good exercise, oftentimes, to look at, since life science and engineering are so important, I always like to look at these R1s to see how much of their research is coming from medicine and how much of it is coming from ag, and where we are relative to that. Well, if you are a top R1 with a med school related to engineering, more than 5 times of the research from engineering is coming from the med school. Where I came from at the University of Pittsburgh, they get more than 10 times what we were doing in engineering because it's such a big medical operation. Now, for the programs without a med school, if they have an ag program, they're getting at least about 50% more in life sciences than they are in engineering. Where are we? A little less than 1-to-1. I wrote 1-to-1 here for A&T. I've shown it over on the side here. So we get about right now the same amount of funding from engineering as we do life sciences as defined by ag. Now, of course, we have just started getting the appropriate matching money to grow our ag funding, and so that's really going to push our research up. So we have to continue to emphasize that number is going to increase. North Carolina State is about 1.5 ag relative to engineering, so we need to be at least there and past there. But that's kind of important. Most of these top programs also benefit from a metropolitan region that they draw on. They tend to be innovation hubs where they have lots of patents and drivers of economic growth. A great example of that I mentioned yesterday, if you look at Georgia Tech, downtown Atlanta, Tech Square, Trustee Lofton, I think we were talking about that. No, I think Trustee Thorpe, we were talking about that yesterday. Tech Square. So most of those universities are really drawing on some kind of metropolitan region. If you're not in a metropolitan region and not close to it, it just makes it harder, right? You have more options because you're doing more research when people are close to you. The one thing that is consistent with everything is there is a significant non-federal research revenue. I want to say more about that. So let's go further. What research foundations and/or industry makes up at least 10 to 15% of the research funding portfolio at established R1s. We got a lot of growth there because less than 1% of our research comes from research foundations, which are typically foundations doing work related to health, or business, right? Less than 1% right now. Our peers that are established, 10 to 15% of their portfolio comes from this. So this is the growth area. A diverse set of research funding sources is really important. You really want to be at 5 to 7 per principal investigator. Most of our researchers have 2 to 3 sources of funding, so we need to diversify the funding. If you're in a state that's growing with good enrollments and a good economy, that's excellent. The endowments. As much as you've heard us talk about endowments for student support and student experience, because that is why we're here. If we're not supporting students and reducing their debt, then something's wrong. That is our first priority, the student experience. I want to also emphasize, as we talk about R1, that you gotta have a big endowment, a good endowment to support a graduate program. You cannot do it on federal funding or any research funding alone. To really run a PhD program requires significant endowment for a number of reasons, for recruiting, for bridging over, for investing in specialized equipment. Most universities that we're talking about have robust online programs where they use the revenue from online to help support the graduate program. As I mentioned in the meeting earlier, subcommittee today, Arizona State has 80,000 students online, over 110,000 on campus. Georgia Tech has 35,000 students on campus. They have 30,000 students online, mostly through computer science. And you were there, right? So this is important because that typically is something that is a non-federal revenue source that you can use to support your graduate program. There's also a free exchange of people and idea. So it means that folks from R1s are sitting at National Science Foundation as program directors. They serve oftentimes on panels. You see them frequently at the major funding agencies. We got to get out, we got to take those temporary staff positions at various funding agencies. So we need to really broaden that because we have to be at the table. So we got to be in places, especially DC at the major agencies, sitting at the table and where the big foundations are. A lot of those are in DC, Boston, New York, Texas, California, places like that. They're also bottom up, and I heard from our Scott Harrison, our faculty staff professional and leader, head of our, faculty senate. Most of these universities, they do a good job, they're bottom up. And so they've done a good job to bring everybody along, and they really get innovation close to the ground surface. It's not just top down. They have a system where students, professional staff, the talented faculty really create ideas that move the university forward. So innovation comes from the ground up. And a big focus has been increasing the involvement, as we said at the beginning of the year, really increased involvement with faculty and faculty senate. We got to increase that culture so innovation is down at the ground surface. And I'll talk about some of the strategies for that as well. Business friendly with low friction on both sides. So that means easy to work within the system from the inside, but easy for others. We're going to have plenty to cheer for in a minute. But it's also easy for others to work with us, right? So if we're going to do work and have partnerships and work with federal agencies, we have to reduce the friction, get specialized expertise so we're easy to work with. That is really critical. And the last thing is, in terms of research staffing, I was talking with a great leader, Melissa Hodgkin, about this. So we're managing, under her leadership, a portfolio. I don't know how much you folks know about this number, but our portfolio under management for research. The portfolio that we're managing for research funding is $350 million. Okay, so right now we're managing $350 million. And most of that is conventional sponsored research. As we talk about doing more contract work, say with government, Department of Defense, entities like that, that is very specialized work. Okay, we don't have a lot of that in our portfolio yet. My point is, the rule of thumb is you need at least one full-time staff person for every $10 million under management. So if we have a portfolio of $350 million, it means we need at least 35 people full-time helping to manage that. We have 22. So we have a deficit. But even if we had 35, we still wouldn't be ready to start to do work with those those really complicated types of grants that require a lot of work on the front end and a lot of post-award management. This is for regular research, so we really got to go beyond here as we start to work with other types of funders going forward. So, I just wanted to give you something very high level as to some of the steps that we've already taken and some of the next stages of growth for R1. So the first is capacity building and expansion of access. So just over the last year, we had 15 full-time equivalents. Some of those are replacements. So it was a net of only 8 or 10 that were new. We're still 13 short, so we're going to be adding those. Remember, we had a position freeze early in the year, but we are addressing some of these. We also established a new research council, which is a group of all the folks involved in research, deans, associate deans, key folks in the provost office, so that there is a unified effort with research, an upgrading of the electronic research software. Remember what I said about reducing friction. In the spring, we're going to have more specialized personnel for contracts and grants to help us in research operations as we build relationships with non-traditional funders. So we'll be hiring those. Also, we'll have a new pot of money, seed funding, $500,000, to help fund collaborative work. That's one of the things we need to do, is work more across boundaries. So this will be seed funding to fund big proposals that are multi-investigative proposals. And there will also be a research faculty symposium. And then 2 to 3 years out, the goal is to really increase our research expenditures 100%, which means that part that I talked about that's missing from our portfolio, the business and the foundations that sponsor research, we want to increase that by 250%. And then that means that we're going to increase our personnel by at least 70% in the division of research. So for us, as I said, we've got engineering. We also have to have something in the life sciences. We need to continue to expand in the life sciences. Right now, we're at a 2-to-1 match. USDA federal funding compared to state funding. Remember, North Carolina State has an average match of 5-to-1. So we are growing. We're at 2-to-1 now. The idea is to go to 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1. That will really get us well past R1 and be very sustained R1. So, so there has been an expansion to 2-to-1, a lot of new ag extension across the state. 15 new research faculty were added this past year, double the number of PhD students in a fairly new PhD program. We've also dedicated 1 human research course in there to hire these new people. 1 pre-award and 2 post-award people have been added because of the rapid growth in ag due to the matching funds from the state. We will have a new dean search commencing in just a few months. And then the idea is to expand to 5-to-1 matching. A couple more things. We have to accelerate and expand our strategic partnerships with entities, not academic entities, but also corporate partnerships and governmental partnerships. So the idea here is we've already started engaging into deep strategic conversations, and I want to emphasize, we're talking about strategic research partnerships that last. It takes a little longer to do that, but I'm not talking about regular partnerships. I'm talking about research, strategic research partnerships. That's what we're talking about. So there are 7 partners that have been engaged about research partnerships. The idea is to develop master service and/or research agreements, and we'd like to secure at least 5 to 7 marquee partnerships in the next few years. The last thing, We've got to learn to develop major resources of all types and significantly grow our endowment. So now, what we've done is establish a framework for a large research entity. And what I didn't point out on the previous slides when I was talking about characteristics of R1, it was listed, but I didn't point it out. Most of them has somewhere around some major significant entity, research entity, that generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's GTRI at Georgia Tech, Penn State has the Applied Research Center. Most of these schools have some big research institute. So that's what I'm talking about here, something that generates hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So we have already established a framework for this. Hire a new leader for development. We've already done that with Tamara Jusserin. And establish relationships with some of these major foundations. That's a big part of us. We want to secure initial seed funding for this large research entity that I'll talk more about. We've got to build out our advancement team. Trustee Stanley, I think we talked about that quite a bit. And develop a framework for these large proposals. So the next few years, we want to establish a major research institute, launch a major campaign, and secure some transformational philanthropic gifts. Just bear with me a couple more things so we can all be together on this. This year, we're not going to have special requests at the legislature. But these remain our legislative priorities, which are consistent with what I just said. The life sciences, health, agriculture, really important. Student support in terms of completion grants and cheating block scholarships. This is important. And then, of course, the facilities, Carver Hall and Health Science Complex. Completely consistent with all the growth that I just talked about and the importance of life sciences expansion for us. To give you some idea for typical state-funded institutions for endowments, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of some programs that we know around this. Virginia Tech's endowment's about $3 billion, $4 billion for Georgia Tech. They have about $75,000 per student. Howard has a fairly large endowment. They're in the DC area. Smaller population than us, so they actually have about $67,000 per student. So this number here represents the average endowment per student. North Carolina State is about 56 per student. And so we're here for now at $257 million. We've got about $17,000 per student. Some of the institutions in the state that just achieved R1 are actually slightly below those numbers. Okay. But it kind of shows where most of these R1s are in the billion-dollar club. Most of them are a little bit over $2 billion. I mean, historically, they got started a long time ago. But having a significant endowment is a big correlation to growth and reputation. So all of those have that. So major resource development. We know that major gifts are always a blessing, and they're transformational, and especially for a university, because it allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. It allows us to imagine a world where we are valued. It allows us to dream. So it's incredible that we have those. So we've got plenty of examples of that. With the Harrison Scholars, we know what we need to do with health sciences. Our most enthusiastic alumnus most days is Willie Deese and the Deese School, and the incredible leadership that we see going on over there with his great philanthropic support and an anonymous philanthropic contribution of $20 million. All these things really matter to us for all the regions that I talked about. And we're blessed. And we're blessed again. And we have even bigger blessings to share. And we're blessed to the tune of $63 million. about them and to move and to cause action. There's no better investment in this universe than investing in young people in the future in higher education. So we are grateful to have this incredible gift and the incredible legacy left by Mackenzie Scott. So her gift, second gift to this university, is a testament to what is possible. And so we will certainly celebrate this. Let me also say, this is not only the largest gift in the history of this university, it's the largest philanthropic gift of this type in the history of the Triad. So that's good company. Combined with the previous gift, that means we have received $108 million in philanthropic support from Mackenzie Scott, and it's unsurpassed. What does that mean? Well, it means obviously a significant or vast majority of this will be a part of our endowment. Our endowment is well over $300 million now, right? Yeah, that's something to be happy with. But prior to this, we were at $257 million. And so this puts us way over that. We still have to determine. Now, I hadn't said how this will be invested. We're having conversations about that, but let me say, it certainly accelerates our path to R1. It certainly allows us to invest in these high growth areas of technology, and it certainly allows us to increase student support, increase the viability of students and student experience, and do it here with the best students in this country, right? So the wisdom of Mackenzie Scott, right, we're very thankful for. So that is rarefied air. I don't know how we can end on a higher note than that, so I'm just going to say thank you, but this is a great day of gratitude, and I'm glad we have people here visiting today to share with us. I'm thinking that, you know, we usually have this much attention because we're talking about so much really cool academic and research stuff. But I think today, and its unprecedented impact on this university and this community, is something that we need to stop and celebrate and be thankful for. So we appreciate being able to share this with people well beyond this community because it impacts people well beyond this community. It's a great day, and we do it with Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride.
Thank you, Chancellor, for your report, and certainly we appreciate Mackenzie Scott for her continued support of our university. We will now have our committee reports, beginning with advancement and external affairs. That's me. Dr. Catherine Edmonds, Interim Vice Chancellor for University Advancement and Provost, opened the meeting noting that Tamara Michelle Josprin will assume the Vice Chancellor role on December 15th, bringing 30 years of fundraising experience. Q1 fiscal year fundraising totaled $14.64 million, a significant increase from prior years, driven by corporate 9.13, foundation 3.3, alumni 1.65, non-alumni 350K, and other organizations 211K. Leadership data remains strong with 100% cabinet participation through board engagement there. Ms. Crystal Boyce, Associate Vice Chancellor for Alumni Relations, provided the Alumni Relations update outlining efforts to strengthen alumni engagement and support for university initiatives. Dr. Oliver